This is the second digital clip that looks at the mind mechanics. In the first clip, we discussed the conscious mind and its limited focus and attention. We discussed also the subconscious and its capacity to store information, and the creative subconscious's ability to create our natural behaviours. Our subconscious mind creates for us a picture of reality, and our picture of reality is supported by 4 key concepts. They are restrictive zones, comfort zones, self-image, and self-esteem. These 4 key concepts all have a direct impact on our real performance. In this digital clip, we're just going to look at restrictive zones and comfort zones. So let's start with restrictive zones. How many fears are people born with? Only 2. The fear of loud noises and the fear of falling are the only 2 things that make babies startle. You can put them in a playpen full of snakes. They will play happily with the snakes until one of them bites, and then the subconscious mind gets hold of the pain that's created and says, aha, snakes are dangerous, I'll stay away from them. All phobias are learnt behaviours. And if you can learn a behaviour, you can unlearn it too. Because the subconscious mind has no judgment and just stores for us our picture of reality, we can learn restrictive zones with very short exposures to the things that we don't like. Take, for instance, spiders. How do people in the UK become afraid of spiders when we have no poisonous spiders around to bite us? Well, it's quite simple. We observe our parents running around the house shouting, "There's a spider on the landing." And very quickly, at a deep subconscious level, our children get the picture that spiders must be dangerous because look at mum's reaction. So let's consider some restrictive zones we might see in the workplace. Fear of failure is an interesting restrictive zone where people would rather not try than be seen to fail. But probably one of the most common ones is public speaking. How do managers and leaders turn to jelly when they have to consider standing in front of their peers to give a team brief or a toolbox talk? It's quite simple, really. If you rewind time back to primary school days, when a punishment that was dished out for speaking at the back of the class, the child would be made to come to the front of the class and tell everybody what was so important that he had to talk over the teacher or not listen to what was being taught. At a deep subconscious level, that public humiliation didn't just infect the person dragged out, but every other person in the room felt the embarrassment too. That's why public speaking is such a common and consistent phobia in the workplace. Restrictive zones can be made very quickly because it isn't the repeated behaviour that anchors the learning, it's the imagination, which, if repeated with enough intensity, is as good as a real event. Comfort zones. We talk about comfort zones as places where people are really comfortable behaving. They are, just like restrictive zones, learnt behaviours. They're like the grass path that you walk across the field every day. People create rutted thinking, which then becomes their comfort zone. And when they're operating inside their comfort zone, they're quite comfortable in the way they behave. They don't suffer any stress. It's just the everyday behaviours we see. What happens when we pull somebody off their path or stretch them outside their comfort zone? The first thing most people do is they revert to type or to form. They try and get back in their old routine in the fastest possible way. The next thing they do is recreate their old behaviours in a new and improved way. Take public speaking as a great example from before when we looked at fears and phobias. If speaking in a group sat down amongst your peers is in your comfort zone, you can have really involved and passionate conversations on a face-to-face level. Yet the second somebody says, stand up at the front or near a board, we start to become evasive. We say silly things like, "My mind's gone blank," or we speak really quickly to get out of that situation so we can sit down as quickly as we can. So comfort zones have an impact on our short-term behaviours, but also our long-term quality of life. Most people go through 7 significant changes in their life, from starting their first job through to leaving their final job. Their comfort zones expand and contract, collapse and develop over a long period of time. The most critical of all is what happens as people retire. It appears as if in the Western world, when people retire, they literally have their comfort zones collapse to a point where they no longer have a reason for being. So how do we help each other stretch our comfort zones? There's a number of simple ways. Probably the most common one is by using a technique called gradual desensitization, where somebody's comfort zone is stretched incrementally a little bit at a time. If they don't like public speaking, maybe they'll start by speaking to a few friends, and then a few more. And finally, they may find themselves on a stage speaking to 30 or 40 people. This process of gradual desensitization reduces stress whilst the person gets used to the new and improved comfort zone. Another way of dealing with comfort zones is to use imagination. A vividly imagined thought has as big an impact on our picture reality as a real event. We could even stand in front of empty chairs and imagine them being full of people waiting to hear us speak. If we imagine vividly and have a great conversation with a room full of empty chairs, at a deep subconscious level, our mind says, "I can do this. This is easy. Actually, not only can I do it, I have done it and I was great at it." And the subconscious mind changes instantaneously. So on this digital clip, we've discussed restrictive zones and comfort zones. And both of these feed into the next digital clip, which is all about self-image, self-esteem, and real performance.